Hi, I'm Radical Liberation, self-declared king of the moon, coming at you from St. Louis, Missouri in these United States. And we have Mad Mercenary.
Hello.
All right. So much. It's going to be a lot of little things. That's part of the point of the Econ Minis, right? We go from, a deep dive for 2 hours on some deep topic on 1 week, and then the next week we're spending 5 minutes on 25 things or whatever. Well, not that much, but anyway. So let's see. First of all, I want to share lots of things with you. Links. Get ready to look in the live chat. If you're listening to this later, look in the live chat for some links. Okay, so I was a guest on a show, not particularly related to what we do here, but I just thought I'd mention it for your entertainment. I was on the Proper Horror Show channel where they talk about horror movies. And they asked me to be on. And I said, I'll be on as long as we just discuss Army of Darkness. If you know anything about what is sometimes called Bruce Campbell versus Army of Darkness, you know that it's not exactly what most people think of when they think of horror. But we had a good time talking about it. And it was with Harian and Hale, the crime guy. Some of you may remember him if you've been in our circles as a Teabag, but he's rebranded as Hale, the crime guy. He does true crime on his channel now. Anyway, the four of us talked about Army of Darkness, and also Chloe's encroachment theory of horror, which she was presenting. And I thought it was pretty interesting. My wife, here's the link. My wife was listening to it and was like, she can't even watch horror films for personal reasons, but she enjoyed us talking about them. She found that pretty interesting. So anyway, something fun for you. Okay, we have a plan. In the spirit of professionalizing the show, slowly but surely, Mad Merc has been gently nudging me to get a little more organized. In particular, we're going to try to have our big topic, our deep topics, the Econ Lore Deep Chat weeks. Deep Lore Econ Chat, mixed up the words. Deep Lore Econ Chat weeks. We're going to try to have those lined out ahead of time. Guests lined up when we're going to have guests or topics picked or whatever. So we can let you know, so we can both be well prepared, that sort of thing. So in the spirit of that professionalization, I have a great announcement. There's a fellow who I have known for years. He's a senior scholar at the Mises Institute. His name is Thomas J. DiLorenzo, a great economist, and he's really gotten into a lot of really interesting econ history topics. So a really nice fit to come on this show, because that's where we've ended up focusing a lot, is history with an economic lens. Specifically, we're going to continue the story we were telling when we did the history of Black Americans. We did a trilogy on the history of Black Americans. And of course, we covered the era of slavery and the slave system and how slavery was sort of dying a natural death, and then that was prevented through government action. He's going to bring us to the next chapter of the story, which is, of course, the war between the states, which we did not focus on during that history. Specifically, why did it start? And what is the economic angle on it? Turns out it's a really big angle. I think you're going to find it super interesting. In fact, since we're being so organized, let me give you an opportunity to prepare if you want to be studious or you just find this topic really interesting. Here is Tom's latest book on the topic. He wrote a book 17 years ago called The Real Lincoln, which was a big hit. And it caused a lot of controversy, of course. And then he's done another one, which I'm not familiar with on the topic, but this one I think is a really good one to read, because basically he's summarizing everything he's done before and a whole lot more, bringing in research for some recent research from some other scholars. It's called The Problem with Lincoln. I just put the link in the chat. We'll be mostly focusing on one chapter from that, a story he tells in one chapter, and expanding on that next week. But the whole book is interesting. If you don't have time to read a whole book, here is a summary by Tom of the book. It's just his own, an article summarizing what he covers in the book. And so that article is real quick to read, and I think you'll find it interesting. And you'll notice that it's on a site called the Abbeville Institute. And if you look at my pinned tweet on Twitter, you'll see that I also point to the Abbeville Institute there. So anyway, all right. So that's next week. I'll want to remember saying it out loud to mention that again at the end for anyone who joins us midstream. Okay, other things to know about us before we get to the content, and that is we have Subscribestar. I have really been pushing that lately. I'm realizing that that is really a smart way to get support from people on both sides. Here's a link to it. Oh, that's subscribers. It's not exactly right. Let me just put, okay, wait, sorry. That is not right at all. What am I doing?
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
The reason we like to use Subscribestar, guys, is because it's a way to It's a way to bypass YouTube. If you
Yes.
want to not give money to Susan or to the big tech industry guys, Subscribestar is a good way to bypass them. More of the cut comes to us, less of the cut goes to the company, and
Yes.
none of it goes to Google. So we have a function on there where you can become a long-term subscriber for $5 or more if you wish. But we also have the ability to answer questions from Subscribestar. So if you don't want to send a super chat because, again, YouTube and Google, you can use Subscribestar as a good alternative. And this way, you can still comment on the show. You can still ask questions, make proposals, and we still get some support from you, and we are able to answer your question. So use Subscribestar as a super chat alternative. Support us on Subscribestar, and we will continue to bring you great content.
Yes, and I have shared the correct link now. And in fact, not only is that good for giving us the regular support, which is so valuable, and people are really paying attention. We are getting more supporters, monthly supporters. So it's really, thank you, everybody who's been doing that. It's really helpful for us as we make plans. And not only that, but you can do what's called a tip. But we're treating that as a super chat for the purpose of the show. And in fact, I don't know if you've noticed, but I start with the tips on Subscribestar before I get into the super chat. So we're demoting the YouTube, at least on the super chat front, down a little bit, down a peg. So that's a really good way to send us questions to answer at the end of the show. All right, we
Correct.
also have. Go ahead.
And one more thing, guys, the regular donations help us a little bit more than the large off-the-cuff donations, let's say.
Yep.
We've had a few of the larger donations. I won't name names, and when I mean large, I'm not talking. We're talking $50 here. We're not talking.
Right.
But the regular contributions help us more because we're able to plan around a budget as to what we can afford and what we can buy for the show.
Right.
We don't have to count upon a large donation. We can count upon regular funding that allows us to put it back into the show, to put it back into resources, to put it back into research and finding books. I've bought for the research for a video that we'll be releasing very shortly, which is something else we need to show.
Yeah.
I know I had to find resources that were not accessible otherwise. So these things are very important to us to have that regular funding so we can bring you the best content available.
Yes. Couple other things real quick. Here's a link to our merch store. People continue to buy Mad Merc's great designs there, and I think as we work on our new branding, Mad Merc, we'll probably have some new merchandise, I think. Yes?
Correct. So we're going to go through
ahead.
a bit of a transition in the next couple months, people. That will include the tech side, that'll include the merch side, that'll include a whole variety of things.
Yep.
We can't slip everything out of the bag just yet, but we are going to professionalize the show in such a way that it will be unrecognizable to what it originally was. And we need your support for that, and we do it all for you. we want to get the word out there, and we want to be the best we can.
Somebody says they don't see how to do a tip on Subscribestar. I've seen people do them, but how do they do them? If you could go to the Subscribestar page, because you won't be logged in, so you might get a better view, Mad Merc, and see if you can figure it out.
Well, while I do that, just
I'll keep going.
It's not the time.
That's right. And then where was I next? Yes, Discord. There's our Discord community. We're up to 633, I think, folks that are in the Discord. If nothing else, you get a little poke when the show is announced. I usually do something in there about an hour or two before the show. So it's a great way to make sure you don't miss the show. But also, we have Mickey in there. We have Mad Merc in there. Lots of folks where we can discuss, ask questions of each other, learn together. And then not going to share the links. I should have those handy. I will next time. But these videos are also showing up on Odyssey and I believe Rumble. I haven't checked Rumble lately. That is what I want to mention. Now, Mad Merc, do you want to give a teaser on that video this time?
Just 2 seconds.
Please.
Just with the Subscribestar stuff, I'm very heartwarmed to see that if you type in RAD, Radical Liberation is the first result that comes up.
Nice. That makes it easy.
Yeah, it does. As for the video, guys, there is a video that is about to be released. I am working on some of the final stuff. I still need a few people to bring back their commentary on it to see what I need to change and get out there. But I think you guys are going to find it very interesting. I don't want to say what it is yet. I want to leave that for the drop of the video, but probably within the next 2 weeks, you're going to see that video drop sometime. So keep an eye out for that. It's a very long form video. It's going to be about an hour long, and it has some econ in it, has some history in it, has some scandal and death and destruction and recovery, and there's a whole story that's going to go behind this one. It's very good. And Radical Liberation, from what you saw of the video, what do you think of it? Maybe as someone.
Oh yeah, well, I was right. I was so totally thrilled when we first covered this topic on the show some time ago. But this video, but it was a spontaneous, fun moment, right, Mad Merc? Because it was like, I did not know anything about that. Mickey says you got to open the creators page, and there is a giant button called Tip Star. So that's how you do that. I wonder if you have to already be a subscriber. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, got to figure that out. You might have to be a subscriber first to do that. That'd be a bummer. Anyway, okay. Right. So it was totally fun to figure this out as we discussed this, Mad Merc, the first time on the show. But fair to say, it was a little spontaneous, and you were not totally prepared. And this video makes up for that in a major way, where you have really done your research and you tell the story that was so fascinating, but now you really tell it with context, with depth, and with accuracy, right? And it's a story that really needs to be known. In fact, I haven't discussed this with you, but I'm trying to figure out how we could do this, where maybe I just do an article under my name on Mises.org, because I don't think they're going to publish an article by Mad Mercenary. But do an article under my name that basically summarizes the story very briefly and says, but to really know more, watch our video, or something like that. In other words, basically try to drive people to the video, because that's the kind of audience that I think is going to be like, I've never heard about this. This is amazing.
I've tried to be as accurate as possible. And this will be my biggest fear, is that I have missed something, that someone in the comments is going to say, that's not true, or you've missed this. And my biggest fear is that I've missed something, or I was really trying to be as accurate as possible with viewing this through the Austrian lens. And I hope to God I have done this right. But
Right.
yeah, I hope people enjoy it, and I hope I've got this all right. I'm only human. I want to emphasize that. Even as a mercenary, I make mistakes. But yeah, that's why I try and get to several trusted people beforehand and get them to vet it. Not only the quality, but sometimes the content. So yeah, if you're one of those very few people I've sent it to as prep, please give me that feedback because this is the stage where I want to try and fix stuff if I've missed something. But not that being said, I hope you all enjoy it when it is released. It will be very in depth. It will go into a lot of econ in the middle of it. It will give you a very good story. It will give you a thriller, I hope, an adventure, and you will see the storm on the horizon that brews in the beginning of the video. And you'll put your hands in your head halfway through the video and go, "How could this ever happen?" But it did.
Are the people who support us public? I can't remember. Like if you
I
go
have
to
no idea.
Subscribestar, are you able to see who the subscribers are without
No
being
idea.
logged in as me? Give that a try because I was going to mention someone, then realized that I don't know if it's anonymous or not. Anyway, someone just subscribed, so a name I know. So thank you. I'll mention it if it looks like it's public knowledge anyway. Or you could just tell me that it's okay to mention it.
I'm going to go mute for a second to go do this, but if we want to start with some of the minis, we can go do that.
Yeah. Okay. So we mentioned the video. Okay. Now we've been talking about how you guys are supporting us, and that's letting us do things. Get ready. Ha! I tricked you. Did I trick you? So I actually did what that was for you, yes. I actually took a picture. My wife took a picture of the painting. I put that as the green screen image so that I could not let you guys know that we'd gotten the green screen. Okay, so I've got the green screen, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with it today. Okay, anyway, it's my new toy, so forgive me if I go too far with it.
It appears that you can see the number of subscribers. You cannot see who is subscribed.
Okay. Right. Well.
No, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Look, you can still have the painting. It's just not going to be the authentic one. It's going to be.
Yeah. Right.
It'll be there.
Okay. So, this is the part where I share the screen. Let's do that. Let me make sure I'm ready for the right thing. Oh, well, I'll start with that. Just I hadn't shown it. That article by Tom. Oh dear. Okay. Give me a sec. What do I have to do? Oh, darn it. Come on. Oh boy, I wonder if this is going to work. No, I don't want
But
that.
anyway, guys, what we're going to be also doing is the flag competition. The flag competition that is happening in our Discord. We will be doing that hopefully at the end of the year. We're going to, again, have our good friends come back and judge some of the flags. But we have that going on. So, again, the brief for that. You have to design a flag for a fictional or non-fictional city-state. It can be something that happened in history. It can be a modern little city-state or a miniature country like Liechtenstein or something like that. But you have to design the flag. You have to tell us the symbology behind the flag, so the colors meanings, the symbols meanings, and you have to tell us where the flag is meant to represent. So is it meant to represent Atlantis, for example? Is it meant to represent the city of Athens? But you have to make a flag for a free city-state that was fictional or non-fictional and tell us what the flag means. If that sounds interesting to you, because last time our winners got silver, first, second, and third place, got silver coins mailed directly to them. So if that sounds something interesting to you, especially since the show is growing and we may just be able to afford a little bit better of a prize for this year, if that again sounds interesting, join the Discord and create a design. We already have many designs that are in there ready to compete. Some are very professional, some are very silly, some are interesting. I'll give it that. Uh, um, then go in, join the Discord, get involved in the community, have a chat, come up with a few ideas, and submit a design.
Now, Mad Merc, you can share your screen, right?
I can, but I think that if I do, my entire internet's going to crash.
Well, please try, because I just realized, because of the kind of different configuration I'm in, because of the green screen, I have to give this browser permission to share the screen. And to do that, I have to quit the browser, which means I'm going to disappear for like 60 seconds.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
You don't have to share your screen. I'm just saying, if you've got one of the stories you were going to talk about, start talking about it, or share your screen with the article if you want. Anyway, I'll be back.
I don't mind. I don't. Okay, go for it. Chat, just you and me. How are we? I am actually going to share my screen because I am going to Chromium tab and show the flag competition. Is that coming through for you guys? Yes, it is. Okay. So I'm going to be a total shill, and I'm going to show you all these designs. Look at these wonderful designs. Look at that. Someone has made this. What is this? The first settlement on Mars. Look at that. That is amazing. Now we got another one. What is this? This is the flag of New Eden. Look at that. That's pretty cool. It's got a whole backstory with it as well. Again, some of the designs are interesting. We'll judge it on its ability to make us laugh, I think. A little bit of a snub to Winnie the Pooh there, the leader of China. How's this? Even Matthias, our mods, one of our mods and very good friend, very good Dane, is getting involved in this. His Porto Mick, I think it is, subsidiary of Mick City. I believe that's meant to be for McDonald's. Although I can't claim I know that. Look at this. I would fight under that banner. That is a cool banner. That is a cool flag. Look at that.
Okay, I'm ready. I think.
You're ready? Okay.
Yep.
Look, we even have kind of an Amazon one. Look at that. I'm gonna stop screen sharing now, but these are some of the designs that we have.
Okay. Wow, that was a pain. I actually went through a two-factor authentication while off air for annoying reasons.
In the background?
Yeah, I might kind of ask them to stop doing that. Okay. Yeah, I'm on a lower level, so sometimes if noise is happening upstairs, then it comes through. Okay, so yeah, this is that article I mentioned. That is a good way to prep for next week's show. Just thought I'd show it. Problem with Lincoln, and as you can see, it's not that long. 2.5 pages probably if you print it out, something like that. So that's that. Anyway, moving on. All right. Very briefly, we are keeping an eye a little bit on inflation, and in fact, it's price inflation. In fact, it seems to particularly be in some higher order goods, as we know to say on this show, things that are used to produce other things, raw material type of stuff. So we've been sharing lumber memes. Here's something else, though. Copper prices. It says that copper prices surged to a record high, above $10,000 a ton in May, due to growth-hungry China, demand for the global green reset, and limited mine development. I don't know if those explanations are the right ones, but that's what disclose.tv says. Anyway, the chart is the main part that's of interest to me. I guess I can't, let's see. Yes, I can. There we go. That's a little better. There we go. There's that chart. And you can see beginning of, it's actually spiking up starting in early, well, about COVID time. It right before COVID time, I think, if I'm figuring this correctly, it hits a sort of low. It goes up by mid 2020. It's at about levels of the previous year. By the end of 2021, it's above those levels, even above 2018 levels. Now, since 2021, it's gone from what? The high 3 years ago was like 7,000, and now it's up to 10,000. I'm not sure what the unit is on that. It's a ton. Yeah, 10,000 a ton versus 7,000 a ton. So everything's fine. Moving on. Let's see what we got. Just on China real quick. This is particularly of interest to me, so I just thought I'd mention it. I've been interested in the sort of eugenics, you might call them, practices. Maybe that's not the right word. Population control, population engineering type control, population engineering policies in China. As you know, there's the one-child policy, which got switched to a two-child policy. Now we have a story. China is ending its two-child policy to allow couples to have 3 children after a census found the population is rapidly aging and births plummet to a record low of 12 million for the year of 2020. I mentioned this to a Chinese friend today, and he said, "Oh, actually, that's in effect now. The 3-child policy, the up to a 3-child policy, is already there." So, just mentioning that for what it's worth. Not going to go into analysis on it. Now, this really caught my attention. Russia to exit from all and to invest in euros, pound, gold, yuan instead. This comes from the Russian finance minister, Silyunov, I think. Easier to see the Cyrillic. Okay, well, that's quite interesting to me because a little foreign policy comment. There's an interesting pattern, which is that when people start to back away from the dollar, things tend to go badly for them when countries do that. For example, or even threaten to do it. Iraq, I think, was going to go to euros, and then the United States invaded for no reason at all. And that's happened multiple times. I haven't done a study to see how clear the pattern is. Libya. Okay, I'm sorry, Libya. You're right. I did know about that.
No, it was Iraq as well, but Libya also did.
Yeah, no. I know. Iraq and Libya, to give you an idea, and probably other cases. So,
by the way, we're not saying that. Just before people start flooding the comments with it, we're not saying Iraq is Libya, or excuse me. We're not saying that Russia is Libya, is Iraq or Libya.
Right, no.
They're weak, or that the U.S. is going to start sending
just invade, troops. Right?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
That's not what we're saying here.
But other things could happen to demonstrate the unhappiness of the hegemon, right? So anyway, keep an eye on that one. Just always worth noticing when a country decides to back away from the dollar. And I like the comment from M. Renovati. Oh, I can highlight. It's emergent behavior. Little inside joke for academic agent fans. Okay, now this next one. Here we go. Let's have some fun with this thing.
He's gonna play with it, guys.
Oops, don't delete it. Use it. There we go. All right, here we go. And is that going to do it? Oh, darn it, because I came in later. I've messed that up. Oh, let's just do that. No, wait. Wait. No, that's not what I want.
Hold on, I got it. I got you. Don't worry.
What can we do? Okay, maybe just that. Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, so we're going to do the TV weatherman thing. I'm new to this. Here, I'll use my my handy letter opener as a pointer. Okay, so what are we looking?
Open is that a spring assisted flick open
No.
letter opener?
It is a fixed
Okay.
a fixed knife style letter opener. I tend to play with it and have magnets on it. I'll put them back on. That's my normal letter opener.
Yours was.
I usually have magnets that I'm clicking around. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So what is this? I wanted to highlight something about it. All right. So what we're looking at are what they're calling choke points. What are they choke points on? They're choke points on the shipment of oil. So the major choke points, and you can call them choke points to be dramatic, but basically, where is oil flowing? Well, the biggest, obviously, is the Strait of Hormuz. That's massive. The Suez Canal, which has come up politically, if you know your post-World War II history. The Straits of Bosphorus. But the one to highlight right this moment is Bab el-Mandeb. And so that is between sort of the bottom of the Saudi Arabian peninsula there and Africa. But there's a detail that's worth knowing. What's right on the Saudi Arabian peninsula side? It's actually not Saudi Arabia, if you look at a map. It's actually Yemen. And what's more, it's not just a random part of Yemen. It's the part of Yemen where the intense fighting is going on in the war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen.
Right.
So isn't that an interesting way to look at the world, to look at these oil choke points? Oh, sorry. Here's another massive one I missed, the Strait of Malacca.
The Strait of Malacca is also, I think, is the second biggest one because
yeah, it is.
And we'll get into the Strait of Malacca and the Strait of Hormuz in another story that we have today. But
good.
Sorry, that is a very small on my screen.
Bab el-Mandeb, something like that.
Sorry, it is very small on my screen.
Yeah.
So you have Yemen and the Horn of Africa that you need to pass for that. And remember that the Somalia and Yemen are not exactly stable states. And these areas have been highly, highly active with not only military vessels, but trading vessels and pirating vessels for many, many years now. And it is all of these choke points, but especially some of the ones like the Suez Canal, are incredibly important because unlike other areas like the Indian Ocean, for example, where you have a lot of space to maneuver, you have very, very, very little space to maneuver in these areas. And so you're kind of herded like sheep and you can be very easily targeted. So a little bit of naval strategy there.
And Berger says Saudis want their pipeline through Yemen, and might have to do with how the oil is flowing here. So no blood for oil, as they used to say. I should check. I haven't been sharing very much yet, but let me share the article that has this picture I've got up. It's from Statista, is the website and the provider of the. I'm sorry. No, the source of the data, it's their graph, right? But the source of the data is Lloyd's List Intelligence via Financial Times. Lloyd's of London. They're the ones who insure really, really big things. So that's interesting. Okay, I see. They wrote this article. This is a slightly old article. It's when that container ship was wedged in the Suez Canal. So it was this image is a way of giving you an idea of where the oil flows, how much was being cut off because of the Suez Canal being blocked, right? What other flows were still going. But it's interesting for us because of the war in Yemen, I think. All right. Go ahead.
Well, I was just about to say, yes, the Saudis are trying to build pipelines to avoid the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll get into a few stories about the Strait of Hormuz later. But the problem with pipelines is that they're very long, and you gotta defend all of it.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to defend all of it. And the Saudis are not exactly known for having a very good ground infantry base to guard everything. They struggle to do what they already do, which is very little. which is why they kind of hire a lot of Western mercenaries who were trained in a lot of Middle Eastern wars and that we all engaged in the early 21st century.
I realized that the tweet that pointed me to the significance of Bab el Mandeb put it so much more elegantly. He says, it just so happens that Yemen has a coastline on one of the global oil shipment choke points. And he points to this story. Guess which part of Yemen is the focus of the fighting? Yeah, well, anyway, follow the money sometimes still works, doesn't it? Maybe lots of times. Okay, so that's that. And let me put my, oops, what did I do? Add that back. There we go. Okay, so next. All right, and then I don't have them in a particular order. I don't know if you had an order in mind, Mad Merc, but these are some of the stories that you had highlighted. Shall we just go through them randomly, or did you want me to jump to one?
Yeah, just read the quote from this one, and I just want to. You'll find my reaction after you read the quote.
Okay, I'm sorry. The quote from Douglas Holtz Econ.
Yes.
Okay, so this is former CBO, so that's Congressional Budget Office, something like that. It's a budget thing. Former CBO Director and American Action Forum President Douglas Holtz Econ argued that President Biden's spending proposals are a mystery amid a tremendous U.S. economic recovery. And so here's what he said. This has been a mystery to me why there's all this talk about stimulus. We're having a tremendous recovery, and the reason we're having a tremendous recovery is this has been a recession unlike any other we experienced. It wasn't the 20th century where incomes fell. It wasn't the 21st century where we saw big wealth destruction like the dot-com bubble or the financial crisis. What we saw was the coronavirus stopped people from spending. They couldn't go to restaurants. They couldn't get on airplanes. They couldn't stay in a hotel. And now that that's receding, the economy is coming back just fine. And the private sector has expanded payrolls throughout 2020 and will continue to do that. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What we're seeing more than anything else is supply side shortages. Now, by the way, that's exactly like Lord Keynes and somebody else too, but Lord Keynes too on Twitter, that's what he's saying. We've heard a lot about the supply chain, a lot about the lack of workers, and that's the only thing holding the economy back. This isn't a world where we need lots of big government spending to make the economy grow. It's doing just fine. Biden's proposed budget doesn't add up. They're going to borrow an additional $1.5 trillion in federal debt over the next 10 years. So you've got big government, you've got big taxes, you've got big borrowing, you have no growth. And so this is a vision where prosperity is in the government. It's not a vision consistent with our history and our principles, where economic freedom and private enterprise drives the standard of living. It's a vision of making the government bigger and having people rely on it. Seems like a good point near the end there. Yeah, comments, Medmer.
He misses the reasoning. He comes to the right conclusion, but
The wrong
he does
reasons, yeah.
everything else wrong.
I think you're right. Yeah. So walk us through it. So, okay, well, let's start at the end, which is that when he says that, I really like the way he put this. In fact, this is a great phrase. I'm going to steal it. Where did he say it? This is a vision where prosperity is in the government. I like that because it does seem that way. It's like the government just needs to unlock the prosperity box, and then prosperity will flow forth from the Santa box that is the government or something. And of course, that's absurd. And he's saying it's absurd. That's the great thing. He's making fun of it. He's saying, no, prosperity is not in the government. It's in economic freedom. It's in private enterprise. And he says all this is about is making the government bigger and having people rely on it. So yeah, that last paragraph or two could be like Thomas Sowell or something, right? I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. It's just that his reasoning to get to that point is so ludicrous.
Right. Yeah. So what bothered you about his reasoning?
Well, firstly, the idea that the economy was having this great recovery. Now, Radlib, please jump in here at any point. But I think at our perspective, with the amount of stimulus that was happening throughout the COVID crisis, the amount of government intervention that was happening, yeah, a lot of people weren't spending as much, but and now they are spending more with lockdowns coming less and less tight. The restraints are being lifted. But is that a recovery, or is that just kind of they're having this elastic band effect? What's not being asked here is what was the lasting impact of all the government stimulus that happened under Trump, for example? Was it really that healthy? And before we went into COVID, was it really that healthy? Was it really that safe to invest in the market? Was it really that good to start a business in this sort of business environment? Again, he assumes that we started from a good position, that we had a recession that was anything meaningful, that the stimulus, again, the assumption here is again that the stimulus during the bad times was needed. He's assuming that we're in the good times now, that we're recovering, we're going strong, we no longer need the stimulus. Not that we didn't need the stimulus in the first place, that it may have been the problem, but rather that, oh, now we just don't need it. Now all the problems of government spending come into light now that we don't need it, now that we're recovering.
Right. So I like Chris Primer's comment, by the way, here, Medmerk. Around 500,000 are filing for first-time unemployment every week. How is the economy improving? I'm assuming he's talking about the United States. Yeah. So we have to be very careful, right? Because as Academic Agent has emphasized, it's going to be back to fresh prints. We got rid of the wicked Trump, and now nice guy Biden is in office. And so everything's cherry now, right? That's the story they're going to try to sell, kind of regardless of what's really happening. So you have to look under the surface, and like Chris Primer did, look at how many people are filing for unemployment. Watch these inflation things that we've been keeping an eye on, right? You got to keep an eye on what's really happening structurally. And the part of the problem with his story, which is that, well, look, consumers are buying lunch out again, and therefore the economy's great. Well, this is like a mistake I remember my dad making, saying that, every year at Christmas, people go and buy Christmas gifts, and this makes the economy, and it's like, oh, Dad, no.
I think Baptiste Say would have something to say about that.
Right. Yeah. So right. The economy is not made because we go out and spend. That came out of maybe not even Orthodox Keynesianism, but street Keynesianism, right? It's just we just need consumers to spend, and then we'll everything will be ducky. But that's not what Austrians look to. The Austrians look to savings. They're much more interested in savings than in spending, right?
Savings is where banks and other firms are able to get the capital to invest in projects that will actually have a return and benefit society.
Right, and grow the economy and produce sustainable businesses, sustainable jobs, right? So what Austrians are going to tend to focus on is not so much consumer spending, Christmas spending, or stimulus spending, because Uncle Biden all sent us a bunch of money, right? We're going to look at saving. We're going to look at are people making investments based on real saving, or are they making investments because the government played with the interest rate or just outright handed them money, right? Because there is false investment, malinvestment, that is investing in things that don't really make sense. And this is how you get the boom and the bust, for example. The boom is when sort of money's easy money and everybody's investing and it looks like things are really happening, but it's not really making sense in the economy. So yeah, could they make it look like a recovery for a little while with these huge stimulus checks and spending bills and stuff like that? Maybe from a certain point of view, but reality tends to catch up, is what we see, right? If it's not real, it's going to fall apart.
Right, and this is why I began my little tirade with questioning his fundamentals of what his narrative are. and saying, was the economy even healthy when we went into COVID? Did the stimulus help the economy? Are we actually having a recovery? If he agrees that the stimulus is needed for the recovery, then why not continue the stimulus further if that's what helps the economy, right? If that's what helps it grow, why not just continue the stimulus? And this has been the argument from the left against conservatives who embrace the narrative that this gentleman is putting forward. Is that, well, why have the government spend in a recession if that's what's needed to help the economy recover? Why not just continue doing that? And there's been no good answer from the monetarists, especially Milton Friedman, on this issue. I mean, again, I don't want to delve into what Milton Friedman's prescriptions were for recessions, but he was the guy who made QE. The monetarist school were the QE guys, quantitative easing. The injection of capital into the system. That was those guys.
Just wanted to highlight what Peter Rossi said. Roaring 20s. Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? If we get another case like the 1920s, which we've discussed previously on the show, like the 1920s, where in the case of the 1920s at least, there wasn't a dramatic price inflation. Prices just sort of stayed the same roughly. Price levels seem to be roughly the same. But meanwhile, there were all kinds of malinvestments going on, and it had everybody going punch drunk with stocks going up, and everybody being like, I don't have to work. I just invest in the stock market and sit back and watch my money grow, right? Could we get something like that for a while until it crashes again? That would be crazy. Surely the government wouldn't repeat the same mistake again. Like say, like say in the real estate market.
Are you suggesting that? Please, I hope you're not suggesting that the government would do something bad. This is no
misguided. Okay,
they're good people.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next story. We've got Zero Hedge. Yeah, I had some Zero Hedge stories too. What did I do with that? Oh, okay, they're coming up. Yeah. After yours. Sorry, I can't get that ad blocking thing off the screen, can I? Yucky. Okay, anyway. Iran's largest warship mysteriously catches fire and sinks in Gulf of Oman. What? When did this happen? This is yesterday?
2 days ago.
Is the story? What did you say?
It was on the 2nd.
Yeah. So yesterday. Wow.
Oh yeah, I forget you're behind in time.
That's right. Yeah. 2 days ago for Matt Murr. Oh, by the way, there we go with the. Okay, so let's situate ourselves. We were on the other side of Saudi Arabia with Yemen, the other corner of it. On this corner, the bottom corner, is United Arab Emirates and Oman. And then we have the Straits of Hormuz, and just across the way, we have Iran, right? So that's actually Iran there.
Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Iran, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, and Iraq.
Right.
We're not talking about Iraq.
Right. And then, so they show Jask. Where'd the ship die?
If you read the article, it tells you.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the Straits of Hormuz, this warship went on fire. I guess that's a picture of it. Went on fire and sank.
So this warship is basically the pride of the Iranian Navy. It's able to launch helicopters. It's used in raiding, especially recently, as we saw in 2020, the raiding and harassment of oil tankers. In that, again, we go back to the oil choke point map. The Strait of Hormuz has some of the largest oil running through the strait. And so Iran, you regularly, especially within 2020, used this ship to harass oil tankers from certain nations and basically used it as leverage. And so someone somewhere basically, while it is officially a training accident, someone somewhere sank this thing. Is my conclusion. Um, uh, again, this was the pride of the Iranian Navy. It was able to launch helicopters, and yet in a training accident, for some reason, and we'll get into other reasons as to why I don't think this is an accident. It was sunk, yet no hands were lost. All hands were able to depart the ship safely. Even though they worked for over 20 hours to save the ship, and had two of the other largest ships in the Iranian Navy to help save it, and all this sort of stuff, it was still unable to be saved, and none of the hands died, which is unusual to say the least. Now, the last time a large Iranian ship sank, it was the Israelis who sank it. I believe in the article it says what ship it was. I cannot remember for the life of me. But yeah, that was a while ago. And considering some of the things that has been happening, I don't think that this is an accident. How do you accidentally sink a warship? That's a really good question. And
There's
we'll
always
get into
incompetence is possible, right? But yeah,
right. But we'll get on to why I don't think this is incompetence. And it's the next story about the Iranian oil fields catching fire.
all right. Let me make sure that is the next story. Yes, here we go. Massive blaze engulfs Tehran refinery hours after the sinking of the Iranian warship. Oh, okay. Right. So this is blow by blow the last few days here.
Right. So Iranian warship sinks, and then immediately, so we have a Iranian warship that has been used in the harassment of Saudi Arabian oil, and it just so happens to sink, and then to add a little bit of a good measure to that, a Iranian oil refinery, one of the largest in Iran, that services mostly China. I'll add this because that's the next story. That mostly refines for its clients, the largest one being China. It catches fire at the exact same time. What a coincidence! I can't believe it. What? No.
I blame a lone crazed gunman. That's what we do here in the United States. And crazy things happen. Yeah, probably
a white straight male Trump supporter, right?
Yeah, setting things on fire over in Iran. Yeah, so this is
there's a video.
Crazy.
If you just scroll down,
I hope you guys are finding the title of the Econ Minis this week a little bit funnier. Middle East still has oil. In light of the stories we're sharing. Anyway, where do I go? Oh, okay, shall I play it?
Yeah, it's 7 seconds.
I wish you could. I think when I share the screen, I have to say to share sound. Anyway. Oh, that doesn't help.
It doesn't matter. There's no sound.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the refinery on fire. Yikes.
Yeah. So why? Okay. So you may be wondering. Okay. Obviously, we know that the Saudi Arabians and the Iranians hate each other for a multitude of reasons. They hate each other religiously, ethnically, linguistically, culturally. We get all that. But that can be overcome with money. Except for the fact that Saudi Arabia and Iran are kind of going after the same clientele. Yeah, look at that thing burn.
Wow.
All within hours of each other, by the way. So again, maybe it's maybe a coincidence, but I'm thinking not.
There's some competition going on between various powers in the Middle East, it seems. Correct. As has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, always. It's a knife fight down there, but
right.
Or up there for me, down there for you.
Yeah.
We can go on to the other story because I think this illuminates a little bit of the context as to why this may be happening.
Okay.
Not that one.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh,
not that one.
okay. This one?
There we go.
Okay. I'll just shift over. Okay, go ahead. Secret meeting between Saudi Arabia and Iran may trigger major policy change. Okay,
So,
yeah. So usually the Saudi Arabia is allied with Israel and the United States and opposed to Iran, in part because they're different sorts of Muslims, I think. Am I getting that roughly right?
so you're correct in that. Um, the Saudi Arabians hate the Iranians, and the Iranians want to kill every Saudi Arabian they can get their hands on.
Mm,
That's been the traditional relationship.
yep.
The traditional relationship between Israel and Iran is complex. Originally, Israel and Iran were best of buds,
Mm,
and then the Iranian Revolution happened,
right.
and the Iranians were still to Israel the best of buds,
Oh, I
and
didn't know
they
that.
were all they were all
After the Iranian Revolution, they
so
got along.
in 87 Israel I think was like halfway through 87 on a single day they changed their policy and they started to become very friendly with Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt,
Hmm.
and Turkey
Okay.
in opposition to Iran. And it was
Hmm.
literally on a day. In fact, there were jokes in the Clinton administration basically saying, "Wait, what? The Israelis are now the friends of the Saudi Arabians? That's crazy. Those
You're
two
right.
hate
Right.
each other." It was literally
Yeah.
on one day. But um, anyway, the Saudi Arabians are trying to compete with the Iranians and getting oil to China. And again, we go back to the Singapore Strait and all that sort of stuff. But they're trying to compete with China, and they made all these speeches previously saying we're going to kill the Iranians if they violate our territory, if they do anything else, we're going to bomb the crap out of them with weapons supplied by the United States. But we'll put that to one side. Um, Now they're taking a bit of an about face. The princes are saying, "Hey, we want to work with Iran. We're going to do all these things," but just so happens that one of the major refineries that Iran was using to help refine oil for China blows up, and I wonder who is going to try and step up to fill in the gap. I want I can't fathom who might try and step up and say, "Oh yeah, you're having oil trouble? Well, we can step in."
Hmm.
And I wonder if the Iranians may have had a problem with that and may have tried to use some of their vessels like they did in the past year to harass Saudi oil going to China. And I
Hmm.
wonder if that threat may have just been eliminated. I just
Right.
I can't imagine if that threat was eliminated, what would happen.
Um,
It's just a mystery to me. I think people know where I'm leading to. They took out the threat. They take out the refinery. They create a shortage. They step in to fill the gap. And they say all these nice words to say we want to work with Iran, we want to do all these things, but they don't give a damn about Iran. They hate each other. They've always hated each other.
hmm.
There's a lot of talk that goes on, but you got to look at action.
Couple chats here that are helpful, I think. Madmerk M. Renovatio says Saudi and Iran had okay relations under the Shah's rule, but that changed after the Iranian Revolution. The Gulf Cooperation Council was formed as an alliance of Gulf Arab monarchies. All right, some context there. And yeah, Sunni versus Shia, Harold Bredsdorf says. They fight on who should lead Islam, the priests or descendants of Muhammad. But on the other hand, these peoples were fighting during the time of Alexander the Great, so there might be an older feud under a new name, right?
Right. And it's not just religious, right? So
Yeah.
there are ethnic minorities within Iran that try to spring up that the Saudis love to fund with their jihadis that they send everywhere across the Middle East. For those who don't know, Saudi Arabia has an active policy of training jihadis. Al Qaeda and ISIS were Saudi Arabian creations. They just kind of got out of hand. The Taliban was a Saudi Arabian creation. They were created during the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan, and the United States funded half of the arms shipments to the Afghani Taliban when they were our great friends. And guess who funded the other half? It was the Saudi Arabians. They matched the United States dollar for dollar. So the Saudi Arabians have a state policy of funding terror across the Middle East, and they send people into Iran regularly to stir up ethnic tensions. And the Iranians have an active policy of terror across the Middle East as well, and they spring up across religious grounds. So there is a religious minority in Saudi Arabia, but that religious minority makes up a majority in the areas that Saudi Arabia has their oil fields. So Iran springs up the religious minority in Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis spring up the ethnic minority in Iran. And then you get into Iraq and Syria, and it becomes very complex. But these two hate each other, and they try and kill each other whenever they can. And this is just another move in that. It just so happens that one of Iran's largest refineries catches fire within hours of one of Iran's largest ships that was used to harass Saudi oil catches fire and sinks. Come on.
Yeah, it seems kind of crazy. I'm just dipping my toe into realism with a book by John. With a book by John Mearsheimer, who was a co-author of with Stephen Walt of the Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, a book that kicked up a lot of controversy when it came out. Anyway, but Mearsheimer is, I gather, a well-respected realist writer in international relations. And sort of the picture he's giving is that we tend to want to focus on, like, is this country a democracy? Is it a monarchy? Is it run by the mullahs? He says in international relations, that means a lot less than you might think, like not very much at all. Countries are going to act in a certain way because of the situation, the international power relations, to some degree separate from what's going on domestically. That I don't know if he's right, but just presenting that as a perspective that you might be unfamiliar with, because usually, especially with the U.S., though they're really hypocritical about it, right? They'll be like, Saddam Hussein is a terrible dictator, and that's why he needs to go. Has nothing to do with geostrategic considerations, oil, him wanting to switch away from the dollar. That's not got anything to do with it. We just really don't like the way he runs his country.
Well, two things on that front. Firstly, as regards to Saddam Hussein in Iraq, did you know all the countries that the United States invaded in the early 20th century were the only countries in the world that didn't have a central bank yet?
Oh, that's interesting. So Libya, Syria, Iraq, none of them had central banks?
Correct.
That's interesting.
And for the example of what type of government and the strategic concerns is concerned, think about the United States' backyard, South America. How many dictators did the Americans prop up during the Cold War? Right, with the great country for freedom, all this sort of stuff, and yet they put dictators into power. Why?
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to this sort of stuff, it is never about domestic affairs and what the type of government is. It's about the international affairs and what can be achieved with that nation. Doesn't matter the type of government that is used to achieve it. It just matters what is achieved. If the Soviets, as long as the Soviets were not in any other power, were not in South America, these countries acquiesced to a neo-Monroe doctrine. Who cares if they're dictatorships? And this is where you get into situations where you had the American government going to Margaret Thatcher in the 80s, asking her not to go to war with Argentina after Argentina had taken the Falkland Islands, because
Hmm.
the Americans were funding the junta, Argentina junta, down
Right,
there
right,
with arms and funding.
right, right. So, part of the reputation, not just the name, right, but the reputation of the realists is that they take a much more a view of things that is stripped of a lot of pretty propagandistic talk, right, and looks at more, it takes a more blunt view of, you know, what's the real thing going on here, not the thing they say, right? Is it really about, we just want to spread love and freedom and democracy? Maybe, maybe not, right? Okay, well, let's keep going, Matt Merck. Anything else you want to say on this story before we move on?
Keep a watch of the Middle East,
Yeah,
because
right.
oil prices are very low at the moment. Everyone loves them.
Mm-hmm.
You get something happening in the Middle East, and remember, it doesn't take much. Iran sent drones from Oman into one of the largest Saudi Arabian oil field and blew it up and got it down for like a month.
Yeah,
It doesn't take much, people.
right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
low prices now are high prices tomorrow.
right. Okay. Biden suspends, keeping on the oil theme, Biden suspends Alaska Wildlife Refuge oil leases. Okay, that's interesting. So they were, I wish it would tell us how much, excuse me. I wish this article would tell us how much they were getting out of this in terms of oil. Um, okay, but it says few companies showed up.
Okay, so we're on to the
Okay,
Alaska story. So
yeah,
the Alaska oil drilling, I am not a huge expert on this one. I'm not going to claim expertise. I read this article, and two things kind of stood out to me. Firstly, the general trend of what we've seen Biden do, and the canceling the Keystone Pipeline, and the increased regulations on energy production, domestic energy production that isn't anything but renewables. Now, I'm. This is kind of, we kind of do see this in this article. So obviously, the Biden administration is not allowing the oil drilling within that region anymore. It wasn't a extremely profitable region. It wasn't extremely high yield or anything, but I kind of just wanted to highlight it as something that's uh, an example of what is happening in general terms in the United States when it comes to energy policy. There is a focus on renewables, even though, we can have a debate about renewables and which ones work and which one are more long term in the technology department. But there's more of a focus in renewables, and there's less of a focus on how do we actually supply energy in the short term, and a greater priority in the green movement, which is, as we've discussed before, is their watermelons.
yeah, right. Um, yeah, so one of the themes I'm hearing from people who are sort of Trumpians critical of Biden is that Academic Agent, in fact, says this, that Trump had been trying to move the United States towards um, more energy independence, and that Biden shut down a lot of those initiatives. So one of those would be a pipeline. Is it the Keystone Pipeline?
Correct,
Anyway, one
Keystone.
Keystone Pipeline. Yeah, I think that was it. It'd been a kind of controversial thing. Trump greenlit it, and then Biden got in one way or another and put an end to that, so that the United States has to stay in an import oil position. Um, I do not know enough about energy stuff. By the way, there is an expert on energy, or he was at least. I don't know if he still focuses on it, but in our Austrian circles, and that's Bob Murphy. He actually worked for an institute or something that focused on energy policy and such. So he actually really learned a lot about this sort of stuff. But anyway, so I don't know enough to know how important it is that the Keystone Pipeline was shut down. Do you have a sense of that at all, Mad Merck?
Keystone was very controversial for several reasons, as far as I'm aware. Firstly, obviously the environmental one. You have the
Right.
watermelons come out and say, as they always do, this is killing the planet.
Hmm.
People bad, nature good. Secondly, is the uh, American Native land rights. It went through, I think,
Yeah.
some reservations or something like that,
Right.
and people were protesting that, even though the pipeline got all the permits and talked to people and whatever. Um, this third thing is obviously the environment, the green energy front. The greenies do not want people to be on. Well, think of it this way: if you're lasting fine on non-renewable energy, and you're independent, as in strategically independent, there's not as much of a push to go onto renewables because you're already doing fine. You have that breathing room. Whereas if you cut off that alternative, like that alternative path for energy independence, the only option left to you is, if you don't have non-renewables, you have to go for renewables. So it's a political move. It's a strategic move in the game of energy to try and push America down the path of renewables. Again, not saying whether that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's a political move.
Um, yeah, I thought. I hope I can find it.
Hi, Rebecca. By the way,
Leo had a nice comment, and oh no, I think a number of people commented and I lost it. Let me see if I can find it really quick. It's right up here. Ah, yeah, I like this comment. Leo Borealis says, "You can't have forever wars for oil in the Far East if you become energy independent." That's an interesting perspective.
this is true. Again, this is why I mentioned in my little thing there about short term. It doesn't really go into any thought about how to create energy in the short term domestically. And ultimately, if you cut off non renewable energy in the short term, then you have to trade for it.
Okay, well, let's cover two last stories, if that's okay, that I picked. Or I'm sorry, I didn't pick them. My audience is helping me. Thanks to those who sent me stories on Twitter. Appreciated. This is interesting. This is from Michael Snyder, actually. It's republished on Zero Hedge. It's very confusing the way it says by Tyler Durden, but then it's just Michael Snyder. Anyway, bad layout. I've heard of Michael Snyder. I think Lou Rockwell republishes his articles sometimes, if I remember correctly. Do global elites use these three giant financial companies to control 88% of S&P 500 listed firms? I don't know why it's done that way, because we know the headline rule. If a headline asks a question, the answer is no. I think the answer is yes in this case, actually, because I went through the article and it seems to be true. There are three giant financial companies, and they are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. And he digs into it to try to find the numbers here. And he finds that BlackRock has 8.67 trillion, that's trillion with a TR, 8.67 trillion in assets under management as of January of this year. Vanguard has 6.2 trillion, and State Street has 3.1 trillion. So you add it up, you have about $18 trillion in asset management. Even with inflation making dollars not mean what they used to, 18 trillion is a whole lot of money. And what he describes in the article is that they flex. Here, wait a sec. Let me, here we go, sharing that article. They flex this muscle. So, for example, BlackRock and Vanguard, two of these big three, they installed two new members on ExxonMobil's board of directors. Why did they do this? They saw ExxonMobil as not, building back better or whatever, not getting on board with some of these globalist initiatives of being green or whatever the heck. And so they use their financial muscle there, majority ownership between the two of them or whatever, and put some directors on the board of directors who would get with it on renewable energy and so forth. So the article suggests that these three companies very much represent the global elite, or what in other contexts we've talked about as being a managerial elite. So they represent a sort of managerial elite agenda, which we have been getting to know all too well recently, right? And they push it through in a lot of companies. They have majority stakes. I skipped over that part. Let me go back. Let's see. Yeah, 80. They are those. If you combine the three, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, treat them as a block. They are the largest owner in 88% of the S&P 500 companies. So that's what he's getting at in the title. Largest owner. That means they have majority share. They can pretty much do what they want with almost the entire S&P 500. They hold leading stakes, for example, in Apple, JP Morgan Chase, Pfizer. All right. So I thought this was interesting. Little peek behind the curtain. And the article goes on to suggest that in some ways, pushing some of these managerial elite agendas might be easier to do through the big corporations than through governments. So the global elite is able to enact change through corporate structures. So interesting, I thought. And he suggests we need to start talking a lot more about corporate tyranny. Okay. One more that
I
someone
would
sent
love
me.
to see the
Go ahead.
corporate structure that they are, and see just who is on what positions, and do a bit of a do some
Yeah.
investigative journalism. Maybe that's something that we can do.
Right.
Guys, I'm going to be in the Discord afterwards. Maybe that's something we do. Let's have a look at some of these people and see who they're with, and I don't know. Let's keep
Yeah.
these three companies in mind. Maybe
Right.
we'll do
And
something on that.
I did share the article in the live chat so that you can start the crumb trail there. Okay. Oh, and somebody says Forge in the Ashes says my Bloomberg terminal can get it all. Awesome. Okay. Finally, last story, Biden to ban investments in 59 Chinese companies, including Huawei and China's largest chip maker. Why does he do this? I really like this phrase. The new executive order signals the administration's intent to sustain and build on prohibitions on Chinese defense companies. So the theme of all these companies supposedly is that they all are part of the so-called defense industry in China, in order to ensure that U.S. persons are not financing the military-industrial complex of the People's Republic of China. Now, them using that phrase, the famous phrase from Eisenhower, is particularly painful for me as a sort of America First type, because the whole point of that phrase was not for us to go off picking on the military-industrial complex in other countries. This is sort of turning upside down what Eisenhower was getting at, which is that we need to watch out for the military-industrial complex in the United States. Now this is effectively the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower was warning about, using the phrase the military-industrial complex and weaponizing it to build itself up, big itself up against other countries. So that's interesting. But yeah, so this is the theme. The investment banning by Biden is supposedly because all of these are involved with their defense industry in one way or another.
I am okay. People know I my stance on China, I think, at this point. But what I have to point this out. Just because someone who we don't like is pointing out something that is true doesn't make them a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can point out the fact that what Biden is doing here may be good, as in to combat China, who we are not friends with. But again, just because he points something out that we agree with doesn't make him on our side. And we may not even totally agree with it because the way it's being framed is very interesting. Now, now I agree with some of this. For example, the chips in particular in Huawei. That's a legitimate security concern because which has been speculated for some time in intelligence circles, is that much of the technology and chips that are used in military hardware across the world have their origins in China. So they're literally made in China, and then they're used for military projects in other nations' hardware, right? So, for example, ships, their sonar and their navigation systems and their uh, infrared and stuff like that. I'm forgetting the other term. Radar. There we go. There's the term I was looking for. If you have chips that are made in China that are compromised, then the Chinese can, at a whim, turn that off or mess with your systems. So some of this I agree with, just taking it from a strategic point of view. But again, be very careful because there's been the narrative has changed on China. We see that now the idea that the coronavirus leaked from the Chinese lab in Wuhan is now no longer a conspiracy theory.
Right.
We see the United States, and particularly Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, change from Russia to China over the last several weeks.
Yep.
We have seen the EU and New Zealand and Australia in particular has been for a long time going off against China. So there's been a shift in the last few weeks to say now China is the acceptable target. We may have come to this conclusion earlier, but just like the article that we mentioned before with the guy, with that man coming to the economic theory, we may have come to the same conclusion, but the way we got here is very different. And I don't trust the way in which these people came to this conclusion. I don't trust the way and the goals that they may have in plan for any sort of agitation towards China. Again, that doesn't make China good. That doesn't make China our friend. But just be very suspicious of what they're saying and how they're saying it.
All right. Well, we were going to try to get some other things done. We're running out of time. So let's hit super chats. I'm going to actually bring this down, I think. I didn't mean to show the page over here. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. Mickey the Fourth says, I'm very happy to be supporting the show. Thank you, Mickey, as always. I hope you get to use my shadow stats for the show sometime. All right, cool, because he had gotten a subscription. And then let's look at super. First of all, see if there's any I can actually have on the screen. Yes, here's one. Tragic Vision says, have you ever done a stream on before central banking? I know very little. I'd like to see you tackle it, especially with regards to the USA. Yeah, it's interesting because the United States has a slightly complicated history there. There was the United States, the Bank of the United States, I think, and they did that twice. And it's a little unclear to me if that was exactly like the Federal Reserve. I'm not sure that it was, but it was something along those lines. And I think it got started, got canceled, got started, got canceled. I may be getting this history wrong. Andrew Jackson famously had shut it down when he got into office. And then in 1913, of course, we get the Federal Reserve. So there is quite a prehistory. It's a little bit complicated because there are various attempts to get something like a central bank going. But we do have some literature on it. In particular, Murray Rothbard has a book, and I'm going to get the year wrong because I haven't read it, but this would give me an excuse. I think it's called The Panic of 1819. Let's see. Yep. The Panic of 1819, Reactions and Policies. For America's first great economic crisis. And I think it would have been outside of central banking that there was an economic crisis. So that would be quite interesting, right? What does it look like when there's an economic crisis? How did it happen? Rothbard, of course, is going to explain how we would get such a thing, what the causes were. So that would be interesting. My understanding is Rothbard's book remains the main academic treatment of that Panic of 1819. So anyway, that's one possible place to turn. There's probably other resources. I need to poke around at the Mises Institute, see what I can find. But that's a very good suggestion. So good, in fact, Tragic Vision, that I put it in my list of topics to do someday. I think that would be quite interesting. Call it, Without the Central Bank or something. I don't know. Have to come up with a better title. Okay, that was the only super chat, I think. Yeah. So I think we're good there. Yeah, I had checked for that already. That was the Mickey comment about supporting the show and shadow stats. All right, thanks to both of you. And we are supposed to be short with this Econ Mini, and we're at not short right now. We're at 85 minutes, and trying to keep it more to 45 or 60. But we covered a lot of ground. Okay, so last things before we let you go. Just remind you again that next week we're going to have Tom DiLorenzo to talk about the economic origins of the war between the states. Here is an article. Just going to drop these links one more time. Here's an article, and here is a book, both by Tom. Whatever you have time for. That'll help you prep a little to understand where he's coming from on this stuff. It's his third book on Lincoln. Oh, and we got a super chat with no comment. It's just is that a sticker? I don't know. It's a colorful super chat from Funkfinger. Thank you, Funkfinger. Much appreciated. It means so much. That's AA's phrase. I'm not going to steal it. It just came to my mind. Okay. Anyway, that's next week. And then I guess the only other thing I would want to say before we leave is that supporting the show by becoming a subscriber at Subscribestar just dropped just dropped that into the live chat. So becoming a regular subscriber at Subscribestar, not only super cheap, $5 a month, but that really is super valuable to us because we start to have a steady income for the show and can plan based on that. So it's really a great way to support the show. Doesn't cost you much and is just tremendous to us. And we've got a number of people. We got quite a few people supporting us that way. So really appreciate everybody who's been doing that. All right, so much going on. It's going to be exciting. Tom's a heavy hitter, I'll tell you. He's been around for a long time in sort of Austro-libertarian circles, and he is really productive. Look up his books sometimes. He's published on a lot of stuff. He's strong as an Austrian economist. He's also got a strong background in public choice, the public choice school. And in fact, next week is to some degree going to be a sort of a public choice week, I think, because we're going to be looking at what were the motivations of Lincoln, and not just Lincoln, but some people who came before Lincoln and really set the stage for the way he was thinking about things, shall we say. So I think it's going to be really interesting and might surprise you if you've never heard anything about that before. Yeah, someone points out Panic of 1819 is free at Mises.org. So that's a good resource. All right. Everything good for now, Mad Merc?
Yeah, everything is good. I just want to let people know I will be in the Discord chatting to people afterwards. I think the topic will be these three companies because that is intriguing to me.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
I think some investigative journalism is required into these three companies. Maybe try to string together what their people are. Who knows?
Yeah, and see if there's any connections to Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, I may have to write an article on that. Who knows?
All right.
Piecing it all together.
Okay. I talk to you all later. Bye.
Bye-bye.